The sun went down about an hour ago and you didn't notice. You flipped a switch, the room went bright, you turned on the television, and a second, smaller light started glowing in your hand at the same time. You opened the fridge and a third light came on just to greet you. You scrolled past something you will not remember tomorrow. One more episode, maybe two. At some point tonight you'll decide you're tired. You'll walk into a dark room on purpose, close the door, pull a blanket over yourself, and switch your mind off for 8 hours in one unbroken block, alone or beside one other person, in silence, in a sealed box. That's your night. That's the entire ritual. And you probably assume it's just a brighter, louder version of what your ancestors did. That night was simply an off switch, a blank stretch they slept through, curled up and helpless, waiting for the sun to come back and rescue them. But the real answer is far stranger. Night was not the end of your ancestors' day. Night was the part of the day where your species became itself. Think about what darkness actually meant for most of human history. No switch, no screen, no lamp. The sun goes down, and the entire world you could see all day shrinks to the size of a fire. And that fire changes everything, because a fire does something no other object in nature does. It builds a room. It draws a circle of orange light in the middle of an endless dark, and inside that circle, everybody has to sit facing each other, with nothing to do. What happens inside that circle? An anthropologist named Polly Wiessner decided to actually find out. She spent years with the hoansi people of the Kalahari, one of the longest continuously studied hunter-gatherer societies on Earth. And she did something nobody had bothered to do. She recorded what people talked about during the day. Then she recorded what they talked about at night, by the fire, and compared the two. The difference was not small. It was a different species of conversation. Daytime talk was almost entirely practical. Who did what? Who took too much? Who owes who? Complaints, gossip, arguments about meat, jokes at someone's expense. Roughly a third of it was outright conflict. Then the sun went down. At night, that same group, sitting around that same fire, barely complained at all. Around 80% of night talk was stories, not instructions. Stories, long ones, about people who lived 4 days walk away, about ancestors, about spirits, about the dead. Songs, dances, trances, names of relatives nobody in the circle had ever met. Why would the same people talk about completely different things just because the light changed? Because firelight switches off the part of the day that judges and switches on the part that imagines. You can't hunt in the dark. You can't gather. You can't even see a face clearly enough to accuse it of anything. The economics of the day become impossible, so the circle fills with the only thing left, other worlds. That is where your religion came from, your myths, your sense that people you have never met are somehow your people. Wiessner's argument is direct. Firelit night talk is what stretched the human imagination past the horizon. Your ancestors did not invent culture during the day. They invented it after dark. But here's the part that gets stranger. You assume they were sleeping through most of it. 12 hours of darkness, nothing to do, no screens. So surely they slept enormous amounts. 9 hours, 10, a long, deep, natural sleep that modern life has stolen from you. That story is everywhere. It's also wrong. In 2015, a sleep researcher named Jerome Siegel, along with Gandhi Yetish and a team of colleagues, strapped monitoring devices onto members of 3 of the last hunter-gatherer and hunter-horticulturalist groups on the planet. The Hadza in Tanzania, the San in Namibia, the Tsimane in Bolivia. 3 groups, 3 continents, no electricity, no clocks, no artificial light of any kind. They measured over 1,000 days of sleep. The average was between 5.5 and 7 hours a night. That is not more than you. In many cases, that is less than you. The people living the most ancient lifestyle available for study on Earth were sleeping about as much as an office worker with a bad commute, and they did not fall asleep when the sun went down. On average, they stayed awake more than 3 hours past sunset, sitting up in the dark, talking, tending fire. They woke before dawn. Nobody napped much. Nobody slept in. But the strangest finding was not the number of hours. It was what didn't exist. Insomnia. In 2 of those languages, there is no word for it. When the researchers tried to ask about the condition of lying awake at night, unable to sleep, suffering because of it, the question didn't land. It described a problem those people simply did not have. So if sleep isn't about darkness, what is it about? Temperature. The data pointed almost perfectly at it. People fell asleep as the temperature dropped, and woke near the coldest point of the night, just before sunrise, not at sunset, not with the light, with the cold. Your body still runs that program. That's why you sleep better in a cold room and why you can lie in total blackness at 2 in the afternoon and feel absolutely nothing happen. You were never built to respond to darkness. You were built to respond to the falling temperature that used to come with it. Now hold that thought, because there's one more thing happening in that camp at night. Something nobody expected. A researcher named David Samson tracked the sleep of a Hadza camp minute by minute, across hundreds of hours, watching 22 adults sleeping in the same small group. He was looking for one very specific thing. He wanted to know how often the entire camp was unconscious at the same time. Out of more than 200 hours of observation, the number of minutes where every single person was asleep at once was 18. 18 minutes. Out of 200 hours, somebody was always awake. Not on a rota, nobody assigned shifts. It just happened, because older people naturally drift earlier and younger people naturally drift later, and the spread of those internal clocks covered the whole night without a single person planning it. This has a name, the sentinel hypothesis. The idea that human sleep is not an individual behavior at all. It's a group system, and the variation between people is the entire point, which means the thing you complain about might be a feature. Your grandfather, up at 4:30 for no reason. The teenager who genuinely cannot fall asleep before 1 a.m. The friend who calls herself a night owl and apologizes for it. You've been taught to see all of that as a personal failing, a bad habit, a discipline problem. It's a security system, and it kept your ancestors alive. So the night was noisy, it was social, it was watched, it was full of stories and half-awake bodies, and one person always poking the fire. And then, there's what happened in the middle of it. In the early 1990s, a psychiatrist named Thomas Weir ran an experiment at the National Institute of Mental Health that should be far more famous than it is. He took ordinary modern people and gave them something they had never experienced in their lives. He put them in darkness for 14 hours a night. No light, no reading, no distraction, just the length of a winter night, the way your ancestors would have had it. For the first few weeks, they slept enormously, catching up on a lifetime of deprivation. But then, their sleep settled into a shape, and that shape was not one block. It split in two. They slept for about 4 hours. Then they woke up. Then they lay awake for 1 to 3 hours. Then they fell back asleep for another 4. And that waking period in the middle was not distress. Their bodies flooded with prolactin, a hormone tied to calm and stillness, the state animals show when they're quietly resting. Subjects described it as something close to meditation, a quiet, floating, thoughtful hour in the dark, held between two sleeps. Where subjects were not learning a new behavior, they were remembering an old one. How old? A historian named Roger Eckhart spent 16 years digging through pre-industrial documents across Europe, court records, diaries, medical texts, prayer books, novels. He wasn't looking for sleep. He kept tripping over it. He found more than 2,000 references to something people wrote about casually as an ordinary fact of life, requiring no explanation at all. First sleep and second sleep. People went to bed, they slept, they woke around midnight, and then came a stretch they called the watch. An hour or so, awake in the dark. They prayed, they talked quietly to whoever was in the bed beside them, without getting up. They turned over their dreams, which were fresh and vivid, because they had just surfaced from them. Doctors of the period actually advised couples that this was the best hour to conceive a child, because by then, both people were rested. Then they went back to sleep until morning. Nobody found this remarkable. It didn't even need a name until it disappeared. And it disappeared fast. Eckhart watches the references thin out through the 1800s and vanish by the early 1900s, right alongside the spread of gas lamps and then electric light. Light pushed bedtime later. A later bedtime compressed the night. The middle hour got squeezed out, forgotten inside, about 2 generations, and then reclassified as a disease. Because here's what you call it now. 3 in the morning, your eyes open. You lie there, awake, unable to get back down. You reach for the phone, you check the time and do the math on how many hours you have left, and you feel that small, cold drop of panic. You call it insomnia. You might take something for it, but look at what your body actually did. It slept about 4 hours. Then it woke, calm, in the dark, at exactly the point the pattern predicts. The waking is not the malfunction, the panic is. Your ancestor woke at that same hour and had somewhere to put it. A dying fire, a person beside them, a dream to turn over. A story half told. The dark held something. You wake at that hour into a room with nothing in it, holding the one object guaranteed to make the hour worse, next to a clock that has already decided you are failing. They had a watch. You have a symptom. Same body, same hour, same darkness. The only thing that changed is that the circle around the fire went out, and nobody is sitting with you. So what did ancient humans do at night? They stayed up late. They told each other about the dead. They imagined people over the horizon and decided those people were family. They slept less than you think, in pieces, in the cold, with someone always awake keeping watch over the rest. And in the hour between their two sleeps, they lay still and let their minds wander somewhere. The daylight never let them go. Night was never the empty part of the day. It was the part where your species learned to imagine and then built you out of what it imagined. So tonight, the sun will go down, and for the first time, you'll notice.